Hello. Hello.
I used to have that tune on my answering machine.
You did?
Back when I had a 212 phone number. I had the
Really? Do you still remember the phone number?
No.
Nobody except for you has ever correctly identified that song.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah, so that's good. And where it came from, which I might as well tell the listeners since we're on air now, is a movie by Jacques Tati called Monsieur Hulot's Holiday, which is so good. In French, it's like some other thing. But it's just a sweet, sweet movie. And you've seen it, I guess.
Yeah, I saw it on Channel 13 back in 1984.
Really? You remember the year?
I do, because I remember where, the apartment that I lived in with Ione at the time.
Right.
Anyhow, yeah, I knew it right away. I know that piece of music.
All right.
Well, I have a soundtrack album of Jacques Tati.
Right. Amazing.
Movie music.
So let me just introduce you.
Right.
We're on air. Happy Friday. Thanks for tuning in to RadioFreeRhinecliff.org in this show. Correct me if I'm Norm. I'm your host, Norm, and I'm thrilled to be here with Marshall Crenshaw.
Yeah, right.
Who we've known each other for 15, 16, 17 years or something. And you brought up the movie, and I just like to sort of follow the random segues. You years ago, I did a class over in Woodstock where we lived once upon a time called "Art That's Changed the Way I See the World Around Me," and people came in and talked on that topic, and you came in and spoke. And do you remember what one of the pieces is you brought?
The only one I remember, it was a dance number from a Warner Brothers musical, a Busby Berkeley.
Yeah, it was a Busby Berkeley
dance
scene.
number. Was there more than one thing, or is
you
it
brought
just
more
that?
than one? But I'm thinking about that movie. It was called Gold Diggers of 1935 or something like that. And there's this big Busby Berkeley dance number,
right.
and you spoke, as everybody who came to class did, on why that changed the way you see the world around you.
I don't remember anymore why it changed the way I see the world
but
around me.
It was important at the time and not so much now.
I think I just liked it.
Yeah.
No, whatever thought I had on the day I did your class, I really had that thought then, but I don't remember it anymore.
Right. It was. I remember it. I always remember it because it was a beautiful piece and a surprising thing for somebody to bring in.
Oh, good.
And that same class, my friend Pete came. And he brought Dark Side of the Moon. I don't know if you recollect
Was he there on the same day as me?
Yeah, there were always two artists presenting, and it was so much fun to do. But anyway, thanks for being here. And I got a gajillion questions. I don't know if I've ever had sort of a prelude to the show that's been as busy with people sending in questions and stuff as this one. Yeah, heavily anticipated.
Thanks for your interest, people.
Yeah. So you're from Detroit. Were you born there?
Well, the hospital that I was born in was in the city of Detroit, but I never lived in the city of Detroit. I lived in the Detroit area.
Like 10 mile, 7 mile?
Yeah, my town was in between, the mile roads, I guess. So my town was in between 11 mile and 12 mile road, between Woodward Avenue to the east and Greenfield Road to the west.
And were you born into that house, and did you live there throughout your youth?
Yeah, my mother grew up in the same town. It was Berkeley, Michigan, in Oakland County. She grew up in that town when it was like some dirt roads and a water pump, right? And
wow.
Her father was a builder, but anyway, yeah, I grew up in the Detroit area.
And your dad was from somewhere else?
He was from Flint.
Oh, Flint.
Famous Flint, Michigan.
Egads. Flint.
And actually, my Crenshaw relatives all still live in the vicinity of Flint, mostly.
Wow, and so do you get back to that area very often?
No, just occasionally,
Did you have siblings? I know you had a brother who played with you once upon a time.
I have 3 brothers. My brother Robert, who played with me, he's a drummer. And he's kind of the odd one out because he's the only one of us that still lives in the Detroit area now. But my brother Mitchell lives in Connecticut. He lived in Texas for about 30 years and decided recently to clear out of Texas. And he's like, anyway, nothing against Texas. I love Texas. But anyway, he lives in Connecticut. And my other brother, John, lives in Westchester. So we're all kind of near each other now.
And so you said the one's a drummer. Are others musical?
Let me see. Well, Robert, again, he was, drummer, played with me for a good few years. I'm trying to figure out how to answer because we're all, I'm the musician, but we're all sort of like, it was a musical household, let's say. Just because everybody in the household was interested in music, like really fiercely interested.
And mom and dad played? Was there a piano in the house growing up?
They got a piano because they thought that I was talented, so they got me a piano for my 9th birthday.
Wow.
But
and
anyway,
upright, spin it.
It wasn't upright. Yeah.
That's nice. And so I'm guessing that they were probably right that you were talented at the piano.
You know what's funny is it's really you can't get rid of a piano now.
No,
that's one thing. If I challenge you to do is if you have a piano, I want to. If you can manage to get rid of it, I want to know how you did it.
Yeah.
Other than just have it tossed into a landfill.
Yeah, they're incredibly hard to get rid of. Even really nice pianos, for free, no takers.
Nope, and I have one, and I got this sort of run-of-the-mill piano when Dean, my son, was going to start piano lessons, and now I never play it, and he doesn't live with us anymore, and so I want to get it out of there.
Want to get rid of it,
and I can't figure out how. If there's anybody listening out there right now who wants a piano, contact Norm. And he'll contact me, and you can have it,
and they'll take it away.
Yeah.
So you're playing piano from the age of 9 in the household, which is a beautiful noise to be echoing through the house. And your brother, I'm guessing, it starts sort of tapping along at some point.
That's about right. Yeah.
And what kinds of things were you playing?
The piano stuff was these books called the John Thompson book.
Oh, I remember those.
Yeah, do you?
Yeah.
Did you take lessons yourself?
I did, and my grandma was a piano teacher.
Well, see, I remember the first one was called Teaching Little Fingers to Play.
That's
right?
Great.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, I had that one, and then after that, it was lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3. But I don't even. And
so you were playing those things. And at what point did you say, you know what, I don't want to play these things, and I don't want to play scales, I want to play something that interests you?
Oh, well, I started doing that right away. As soon as the piano was in the house, I started trying to play it by ear, just play stuff that I want to, rock and roll songs on the piano.
And what
stuff that was on the radio.
Such as?
Well, let me see. I've told this a bunch of times, but my dad was interested in rock and roll music. That was his music, even before I was born. He loved black music all his life.
So we're talking like 1950?
I was born in 53.
Okay.
Yeah. So the music I heard, the soundtrack to my childhood was rock and roll music because of him and because of my older cousins. So, it's just all that stuff that you would hear on an oldie station now, but much, much more.
And so was the radio always on in the household when your dad was there?
Pretty much. It seems like it was, looking back, like there was always music playing, and then we'd be in the car a lot, and there was the rock and roll stations on the radio.
Right. And
so it just is inundated with it all my life,
Right. And is there music on in your house now?
No, there isn't. It's kind of sad too because you've known me for a while.
Yeah.
So even right when you first met me, I was probably complaining about how my hearing was messed up.
Yeah.
So, and that's really just the sad fact of life, but I really am thankful that I can hear as well as I can, because I have a good friend who was a music editor on Hollywood movies for a bunch of years, and he had to give up his career because he was losing his hearing. And the state that his hearing is in now, he describes it to me, and it sounds like a nightmare. He says, like, music to him, it just sounds so distorted and so skewed that he can't even tell what it is, even if it's something that he knew from before.
And even with hearing aids, I mean,
he got some like cochlear implants or whatever.
Right.
Did you ever see that movie called The Sound of Metal?
No.
Oh, that's a good movie. And it's about hearing loss. And
have you personally tried hearing aids?
I have some, and like I said before, I'm really glad that I can hear as well as I can, because when I do listen to music, I can comprehend it. But I have this condition called tinnitus, which a lot of people have. And if I get in the mood to listen to music on headphones, and it's nighttime or whatever, I wake up in the morning and my ears are like ringing like crazy.
Oof.
I still do it sometimes, but
right,
I got to pay the price the next day.
Huh.
And I still play gigs too. I mean, I'm not going to stop as long as I can comprehend the stuff at all, and as long as I can stand up on a stage and play, I'll do it. But
right,
if I went home, there are a bunch of records by the stereo, and it's stuff that I have been listening to lately.
Right. And what is that? What have you been listening to lately?
Let me see what's in the pile. I separated out all my. It's like there's Duke Ellington records, Ornette Coleman records.
Right.
I forget what else. Oh, I bought these. I discovered this. There was a series of classical recordings back in the 50s called Mercury Living Presence.
Wow.
The Mercury Records. That was a big record label.
Sure, I remember that.
Well, they came up with. They had an engineer named Robert C. Fine, and he came up with a recording method for the label, recording orchestras using 3 microphones, all 3 up like above where the conductor's standing, And there's one over here on this side of the orchestra. There's one over there on the other side, and then there's one in the middle where the conductor's standing. But I got one of these albums and played it, and it was so vivid. I'm like, I can hear it. I can hear this music, and it was some kind of it was Stravinsky. And I'm like, I can hear it, and I was overjoyed. So I went on a binge of buying more of these Mercury Living Presence records, just because you can hear the music so well and so clearly, because it's only 3 microphones.
And when you listen with the headphones?
Sometimes, if nobody's home, I crank it up on the speakers.
Nobody's home. That would be Ione, who I really wanted to come with you.
I really, I mostly like to listen to music alone. It's just I've always enjoyed it the most as a solitary thing, or listen to records.
That's interesting, because of course you're making music or you're performing to large crowds or people listening together.
True. Well, I like that too.
Right. So back to
I should interview you sometime, Norm.
Yeah, sure. Well, you had a radio show, right? You had a show on KZE and a show on FUV, and
true.
You've had your own radio shows throughout the ages.
I never had guests though.
Yeah.
People would ask sometimes about that, and I'd say no, it's just me playing records.
Yeah.
With no guests. But if I ever do it again, I'll have you as a guest.
All right, good. I would love to be a guest on your show. So you're playing piano. You're 9. You've got a talent. The folks get it. It's a musical household. When did you first sort of get the bug and be like, I want to do this for my life?
Pretty early on, like even before I got the piano or anything. I was really just obsessed with the music on the radio, and it's the stuff would just stick in my mind,
Right.
So I don't know. It just felt like there wasn't really anything else that I was passionate about,
The stuff would stick in mind, and you talked. I'm trying to find my notes here about your most famous song, "Someday, Some Way." And Gene Vincent, is that what it was? You said somewhere that he had like a song with sort of a vibe to it.
Oh, well, here's what happened. I got interested in rock and roll from the time I was a child, right? So that's like mid to early, or like mid 1950s going forward. Elvis Presley and Fats Domino and, all that kind of stuff. I got interested at that time. And I just kind of followed the timeline of the music as I got older, into the through the 60s into the early 70s.
Uh-huh.
And then some kind of happened in my mind in the early 70s where I wasn't connecting with the contemporary stuff the same way as I had before. And that's like for a lot of personal reasons, I guess. But anyway, so what I'm trying to get to, I'm sorry to ramble.
Oh, please.
But what I'm trying to get to is that I started to rediscover the music of my childhood, like when I got to be about 19, 20, something like that. I started to hear it again. Now you can hear everything anytime you want to.
Yeah.
It's like all of popular culture from day one, from the dawn of recorded sound. It's like right at your fingertips.
It's
always.
amazing.
But it didn't used to be that way. Like back when we were kids, or when I was a kid, it was like once something was old, it mostly disappeared, right?
Yeah.
There wasn't any oldies radio or anything like that till the 70s, until after American Graffiti came out. But anyway, I started to hear the stuff again, and I loved hearing it again, and that I just kind of stayed obsessed with it for a little while. And when I was writing my own stuff, I was bringing all of that into the equation,
And when you started writing your own stuff, did it follow a certain predictable pattern? Did you come up with the tunes first, or a lyric first, or didn't?
Yeah, it did follow a predictable pattern for me, because it's like it was like an idea of a sound first, and then I just I knew how to make recordings, and I wanted to do that.
And how did you know how to make recordings?
Go ahead.
How did you know how to make recordings?
Well, I just wanted to learn. So at one point, a band that I was in the Detroit area, we bought, like, Detroit in the 60s was like a boom town for record companies and music companies. Of course, there was Motown, which is still like a monolithic, gigantic thing.
Right.
Even now, it still is, and it was back then. But alongside of that, there was dozens of others. And there were hit records on the radio that were locally made, and record companies. But then the 70s rolled around, and Detroit just kind of died. It was weird, but. All these companies were liquidating, and a band that I was in, we bought the recording equipment of this outfit called Sidra Productions.
Uh-huh.
Sidra.
Sidra.
And they had a hit record in the 60s that I really liked by a group called the Precisions, which was kind of a Temptations sound-alike group a little bit. But they had this record on the radio on the Drew label called If This Is Love, I'd Rather Be Lonely. And then they had another one called Sugar Ain't Sweet. So we bought the equipment from that label when they liquidated, and they threw in a bunch of tapes with the equipment, and I was playing the tapes, and there was all different kinds of stuff on it. But I heard some outtakes on one of the reels of tape of "Sugar Ain't Sweet" by the Precisions.
Right.
So anyhow. I learned how to record on that equipment, and it was 4-track equipment.
So you recorded over the tapes that they gave you,
I didn't record over the outtakes of Sugar Ain't Sweet. Yeah.
That's funny. All right. Now, what about somebody wrote in? I get so many questions from people.
Yeah.
Somebody wrote in and said, we're talking about Motown, the radical 60s rock, MC5 Stooges, hard-hitting Michigan rock sound, Bob Seger and Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
Were you open? Did you enjoy those people?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. By the time frame that guy's talking about with all those groups he name checked, FM rock radio was a thing, and the station in Detroit was WABX, and it was really like the voice of a particular community. Now, time to do my old guy rant, but if you travel around the country and listen to radio stations, it doesn't really matter what format it is. they really all sound exactly the same, and the playlists come from corporate headquarters or wherever. But
Right.
back the time frame that he's talking about and that I'm talking about, like, it was the WABX was like coming from the grassroots,
Right, and a rock
So,
station in one city would have a whole different lineup of songs they were playing than a rock station in another city.
Yeah, that's right. So, and there was also a lot of hometown pride in local radio, as I recall. It's like if somebody from the Detroit area made a record and it got on the radio, whether it was a national hit or not, the DJs would talk about it like this is something special. Let's
That's
all
great.
get behind this.
I love
everybody,
that.
So
That's what they do here in Rhine Cliff.
yeah, RadioRhinecliff.org.
Yeah. So when did you leave?
yeah.
When and how did you leave your hometown? And where'd you go?
I just got to a point where there was just like no reason to stay. I had like 75 reasons to leave and maybe 2 reasons to stay. And I wasn't doing anything. My life was at an impasse.
Sounds like a song lyric.
It could be.
So where did you go to?
Well, I like that it happened this way. I ran into this guy that I went to high school with, and he and I had jammed together in some basement bands, and he was a good player and stuff. And I ran into him one day by chance. I hadn't seen him in a couple of years. I said, "Wow, Ron, how you doing? Where have you been? Blah blah blah." And he explained to me that he was visiting because he'd moved to California, and so I was interested in that. And we're just talking, and after a while he said, "Well, the band I'm in, the guitar player just quit, and when I get back, we got to audition guitar players." And he was telling me this with a kind of a smirk, like not seriously. You're right, but I said, "Well, when are you going back?" I just decided I would go with him when he went back. And it was like utterly spontaneous right at that moment. But I didn't even, I hadn't really been thinking about leaving, but I just had this conversation with the guy. During the conversation,
and so
I decided I would leave with him when I went back.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
And so at some point you added, you're pianist, you added guitar to your repertoire.
I was a guitar player, yeah.
Yeah. What kind of guitar did you have when you moved to California with this guy?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I know.
Well, and I do remember. I mean, I sold an amplifier to try to get some funds together, and it was like a highly coveted amp. And now it is, it was a Fender Tremolux amp from the 50s.
Uh-huh.
Now they're like $10,000, and I sold it to somebody for a few $100 back then. This was 1977. And then I had a 63 Telecaster that I sold that to raise funds. But it's too bad I let that go because that was a really nice one. And then I had my Stratocaster that I still have, and I had the other amp I had was one called a Vibroverb. Fender Vibroverb, which is also like like a high dollar item now. But
so the Stratocaster you landed in California with, you still have.
I do.
Love that. And did you have to audition for this band, or by the time you got there, did the guy say, "All right, you just take the job"?
Yeah, I auditioned for the band, and I didn't get the gig because the singer and I didn't click at all, and I didn't like the stuff the band was doing. It was all cover material, a lot of Neil Diamond stuff that I didn't like back then, like "I Am, I Said" and all these kind of schlock songs, in my opinion. But the problem was back then is I had no people skills. Like if I didn't like you, I wanted you to know that I didn't like you. So I must have given the guy a vibe that he didn't like. So, but the surprising thing was he was nice to me because after I didn't get the gig with him, or he didn't let me have the gig with him, he told me about another opportunity, a band that I could join. All I had to do was show up, and I could be in this band and travel around with them and make money.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what was that band? What kind of stuff did they play?
It was a band that played country music, like just sort of like pretty wide range of stuff. They'd do some country oldies, and then they would do stuff that was on the radio just then. And that was interesting, It was more interesting to me than than Neil Diamond, you know.
Yeah. And where were you in California?
Well, let me see. I went to L.A., and then when I didn't get that gig, and I had to get this other gig, in order to get it, I had to drive to Elko, Nevada by myself, and I did. And I just showed up, and I'm like, here I am, and I went on stage with the band that night. I think that was in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Egads.
Yeah, it was nuts. And, I mean, you know, I love it in retrospect that I did all of that. But, you know, there was like, just the drive to Elko, I mean, I was in the middle of nowhere and no cell phones. I'm just, you know, and I got the check engine light flashing the whole time I'm driving. And,
right.
You know, but it worked out, and I didn't die. And if I hadn't gone and done that road trip, then I don't know where would I be right now.
And somehow that led to other gigs.
I just kept going, you know. I just kept stepping and moving forward, like.
And according to the you know, biography I find online, at some point around then you got a gig in this traveling production of Beatlemania.
Yeah, that happened on that trip. I used to, every 2 weeks, the new issue of Rolling Stone would come out, and that was like my missive from civilization.
Right. Because
I was out in these little towns like Pinedale, Wyoming, and Rock Springs, and Elko, Nevada, and you know, it was great, you know, because it was a whole other world to me. But I'd go get Rolling Stone, and it would be like, okay, now I'm back. You know, something, this is connecting with something that I understand, right? So every 2 weeks I would get the new issue, and 1 week they had a classified ad in the back with an open call audition thing for Beatlemania, and I just called the number, and that was it. You know, I sent him a demo tape a few weeks later. Yeah,
and they said, well, come on out. And sort of audition, or they just gave you the...
Yeah, they sent a guy to audition me in the Detroit area.
Okay.
It was a guy named Sandy Yaguda, who had been a member of Jay and the Americans. Remember that?
Yeah.
He's still around, and I mean, probably not so much lately, but just before everything went away, it shut down. They were still like Jay and the Americans gigs.
So he auditioned you. I'm guessing you sang some stuff that you wanted to sing, and then he probably said, I want you to sing some Beatles songs.
No, like I said, I'd sent in this tape, which is a really good, like, sound-alike thing of a Beatles record, and a picture of myself, you know, a profile shot where I had hair down to past my shoulders. I looked a lot like John Lennon, and my theory always has been that they decided they were going to hire me anyway, but they came out and they turned the audition into a media event because they were about to launch a touring company of the show. So they did a whole thing where I got my picture in the paper, and it was to kind of set the stage for them taking the show on the road, right?
Right. And so, how long were you with the show?
It was from March 1978 until February of 1980, so almost just shy of 2 years. And I was first an understudy in New York, then I was in the West Coast company for 6 months. Then that company closed, and then I went on a touring company. I'm specifying all this because people sometimes say they say that he was in the off-Broadway production, and the show was never an off-Broadway show. It was always Broadway. You know what I mean? It was never. Later on, they had some kind of bus and truck thing, but I was gone by then.
Bus and truck. I want to see pictures of you with your hair that long.
Well,
playing John Lennon.
Okay. I didn't bring any. But.
Yeah. Well, send them to me later. We'll put them on the radio website. And what were your favorite songs to perform?
Good question. I'm not really sure. At first, I just liked doing the whole show, you know. And,
they're great songs, I mean.
Yeah. But then after about 3 or 4 months, I got bored. I started to get bored with it. So then I didn't really like playing anything. It was like first I liked playing everything, and then I got tired of playing all of it.
Wow. All right, well, we've got questions that readers sent in. Desert Island Beatles album. If you're on a desert island, you could only have one Beatles album. What would it be? I know.
It would be Bo Diddley's 16 all-time greatest hits. No, actually, my favorite Beatles album, and I like them all to some extent or another, but my favorite one is one called The Beatles' Second Album, which was a U.S. release only, and it was it's all rock and roll. It's Please Mr. Postman and Thank You Girl, and I love that period of Beatleness, when they're just a straight up rock and roll band and a really good one. That's my favorite era of theirs. And but again, I like it all. Don't get me wrong.
And prior to getting the gig playing John Lennon, who was your favorite Beatle?
When I was a kid, I really idolized John Lennon, and he influenced my worldview. It wasn't just him who did. There were like Soupy Sales was a big influence on me when I was a little kid.
Oh my God!
And there were similarities in John Lennon's worldview to Soupy Sales. They both were absurdists, kind of, and they both would kind of tell the kids that the adult world, in their own way, that the adult world was an absurdity.
Yeah, sure.
I really picked up on that when I was a kid. I love anybody that sent that message. I was right there, picking up on it.
That's such a hilarious connection to make, Soupy Sales and John Lennon.
I guess, yeah.
And Lennon's got that song, it was off a solo album, Watching the Wheels Go Round and Round, which is a little bit like the adult words, like, what are you doing? You can't do that. And he's like, I'm having fun. This is my jam.
Yeah, I like that song.
Soupy Sales. So, what was his dog's name? I'm trying to remember. Remember? He had this dog. It was who you never saw. I think he was always off stage left.
Yeah, there was Pookie.
Pookie.
That was sort of the cute one. And you know why I remember this? Because I just watched the Soupy Sales show the other night on YouTube. But anyway, there was White Fang and Black Tooth and
Fang is, I think Fang is what I was thinking.
I loved that show when I was a kid. Me and every other kid in the Detroit area.
I did too. So listen, you were kind enough to bring some. It's that time in the show where we drink, and we've been drinking all the way through. But we talk about what you brought, which is delicious. Tell the listeners what you brought for us to enjoy.
People are probably going to be surprised to hear that I haven't been drinking thus far. But anyway, this is just a bottle I picked up, a bottle of bourbon made by the Taconic Distillery.
Right,
which is local stuff.
Yeah, it's super delicious.
It's tasty. Thanks. And I bought it at the liquor store owned by Charles
Derbyshire.
I never knew his last name.
I think it's called Mill Street Wines and Liquors or something like that.
Yeah. I went in and saw him today.
Yeah, he's got a lovely selection of alcohol in there.
He does. Yeah, it's a great store.
Cheers. Thank you so much for bringing it and for being here.
You got it.
And you also were kind enough to send in some songs, 3 songs. And I listened to them. They're all so good. They're really, and the production value, I mean, it's sort of a big, it feels like a big production. Where were these songs made?
All 3 of them I did in my little barn that you've probably seen.
And you have other musicians come in?
Not on this stuff, no. I just did it all myself. Because it was lockdown time.
Right. Well, they're really good. I really enjoyed them, and we should hear one of them. Which one would you like to hear?
I don't care. How about...
you sent Sante Fe and Couldn't I Just
Tell You?
And one other, I'm forgetting the name.
Play Sante Fe. I have to choose one, so that's the one I'll choose.
Can you tell us a little bit about it before? Where did the inspiration come from?
Well, I didn't write this song. It was written by a guy named Greg Turner, who I just met through a mutual friend a bunch of years ago. But Greg, he was a founding member of a band called the Angry Samoans. But now he makes these solo records that's the stuff that I've heard. I've heard this Angry Samoans a little bit, but this mutual friend of ours gave me one of Greg's solo records, and this song is on it. And I just was really intrigued with the song. It sounds like lyrically, it seems like it's 2 separate songs. Like the first part is a breakup song, and then the second part is about like an arsonist or something. I'm not sure. But.
Wow. So when you choose to do a cover of a song, what do you think? Are you thinking, I could bring a slightly different interpretation to this, or they didn't take it where I'd like to take it, or
definitely. I got to personalize it, right? Otherwise, why bother?
Yeah. So there was something about this song that attracted you motivated you to
his
do your
version
own.
of it I really like, and it just struck me as having this kind of hypnotic quality to it, and that's what I liked. And then I also thought the lyrics were cool.
So you kept the hypnotic quality, I'm guessing.
I hope
kept
I did,
the lyrics,
yeah.
but added your own sort of.
Yeah, I mean, I just played it all, so it's got a certain stamp on it.
And the full title is.
It's just called Sante Fe. Oh, actually, the steel guitar player is a guy named Mike Neer. There is another person on this track.
And did he record that somewhere else and send it to you?
Yeah, he did it at home. Again, this was
amazing.
Like May of 2020, right?
Right.
Nobody could go anywhere.
Oof. All right. Well,
couldn't even get my hair cut at a barber shop. Remember that?
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to hear Sante Fe right now.
Okay, I'm going to listen too.
Up one day to find no reason in your life to find, and no thoughts left to call your own, no light that's bright enough in darkness to atone. My baby's left, she's gone away. She says she's going to Sante Fe. No words were whispered to explain. When on an empty piece of paper, she just signed her name. As the days go by, I keep wondering why there was no other way. Dark rain clouds hover in the sky, blot out the sun as the days go by. 15 will fall as the shade draws down. Love's running out on the dark side of town. Brown haze of summer is sifting through the trees near the freeways of downtown LA. Not in Sante Fe. a spark to the ground and watch it go. Race back to the car and watch the show. How did it ever get this weird? Insurance salesman of the year. Back home his wife's wondering why he's late. His food is getting cold, should she leave it on his plate? And now his eyes are open wide, and sweat pours down his face. And he starts to cry as the smoke-filled sky chokes off the light of day.
What a gorgeous song. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Well, I'm glad you like it.
So has that been released somewhere? I mean, can people find that and buy it and download it? Or
Yeah, it's complicated, but I made some albums for this label called Razor and Tie back from like 1993 to 2001, and maybe like 3-4 years ago, I was able to reclaim all the masters, the rights to them, and so I made a deal for a reissue series of my Razor and Tie albums.
Oh, cool!
Yeah, and the first one came out. The first one in the series came out just in time for all the record stores to close down. This was like end of 2019, beginning of 2020. But anyway, the second one is due out now. Are the record stores going to be open? I don't know. I hope. But anyhow, the second one's coming out, and with each one, there are like bonus tracks, brand new recordings to go with the reissue albums.
Right.
So this one, funny is that the vinyl for this one is already available. Amazon has the vinyl, but there aren't any CDs till February. So we decided to make the official release date is February.
Okay.
But the album is called Number 447. That's the title of the album.
Why?
Just a random number. It's sort of a joke too, though, because there used to be all those groups like Chicago, for instance. They would just put a number on all their albums, like Chicago 2, 3.
Oh, I loved Chicago.
36 or whatever it was, And so that when I was trying to think of a title for this album of mine, I thought, well, how about a number? How many albums have I made? Oh, I guess it's number 447, right? It was a joke.
How many do you reckon you've actually made? Do you know?
A studio, I guess what you would call studio albums, I think 13.
Okay.
I think that's the number.
And then you've played on a whole bunch of other stuff, and you've collaborated with a bunch of people.
Sure. Yeah, I've done all that stuff.
And what are some of the collaborative highlights over the years for you?
Let me see.
People you've collaborated with and really gone well. Or who have you not yet collaborated with, and you're like, gee, I always wanted to work with so-and-so.
I never think of stuff like that. I always just try to think about what I should do myself. But,
right.
I just have a kind of a limited scope, but I don't know. I mean, I've worked with, this is a while ago, but back in the 80s, I worked with, I was on a Was Not Was album track, and I worked with this country act called Foster and Lloyd. I forget who else. It seems like there are more, but I just can't think of them right now. And
right now, you tour. You've got a gig coming up somewhere in January, supposedly.
I hope so, yeah. I have 2 shows in February, and I really hope they stay on the calendar. I'm worried about it because they're both in New York State. But anyway, I'm at a place called the Rockland County Performing Arts Center on the 5th of February, and then the next night, I'm at the Iridium in New York City.
Oh wow!
So I just like I'm saying, I hope that they both stay put.
It's fun. It's a funny place, the Iridium.
Yeah, funny how?
I used to go there way back when and see jazz acts. And
it started out as a jazz club. Yeah.
Oh, it's no longer.
I think they have jazz sometimes, but they mostly have to kind of cater to the tourists.
It was a little bit chrome and mirrors and fancy light show kind of.
Yeah, well, there was 2. This is their second location that they're in now.
Okay.
But I used to go to the old Iridium, and
it was up near Lincoln Center or something.
Yeah, that's right. I used to go there once in a while. I saw Bobby Hutcherson there, and I saw Larry Coryell and Russell Malone. 5 guitars play Mingus.
Wow.
Trying to think of shows I saw at the Iridium.
Cool.
But now, at some point, Iridium kind of switched over to, more of a rock thing.
Oh, okay. And so when did you become interested in jazz?
I kind of always was, but that I mentioned before the FM rock station in Detroit, WABX, that really had a lot to do with expanding my tastes and my range of knowledge, just my range of interest, I should say. ABX, because have you ever heard of John Sinclair?
No.
John
not ringing a
Sinclair
bell.
was kind of like a local thought leader, of the youth culture and art scene in the Detroit area when I was in my teens, and he had kind of a big influence on WABX. He might have been like one of the, original. Anyway, a lot of his thinking went into what showed up on the airwaves at ABX, and he was a jazz fan. A lot of the DJs were, they were into like, Sun Ra and Pharoah Sanders and Alice Coltrane, stuff like that would get played on the rock stations back when they first showed.
That's what I remember. There's a station in Cincinnati where I grew up that played all of that stuff. And you'd hear like John Clemmer, David Sanborn, and Led Zeppelin and Tom Waits, and it was such a delightful mix of stuff.
I loved that. And when that went away, that was when I got alienated from FM rock radio, and I went back to the top 40 station and the oldies station.
Right.
But when it was like that, then I just kind of...
But the stations that you've spun discs for are kind of like that, FUV and KZE, Freeform.
That's right. Yeah, that was fine for me because I never heard a word from anybody about what I should or shouldn't play.
Right.
And that was great.
And there must be a certain amount of pressure, I guess, if you get once a week, a couple hours, you got to like find all this music to play.
Yeah, it was really fun though. I always like doing it. You probably like doing this too,
I love it.
It's so
much fun.
There's something about it. It's just exciting or something, But yeah, I like doing my radio show.
Right. And so you talked about Iridium. Do you have a favorite venue? I mean, what's the most fun you ever had in a particular venue? And you're like, wow, this is a great room or a great stadium or whatever.
Well, I really like a lot of them. I mean, I liked a lot of the places I played over the years, but like the Old City Winery was kind of like a place where I could. Well, let me go back even a little bit further as to the bottom line. I could just walk up to the box office at the bottom line and say, "Here I am," and they would escort me in and give me a table right in front of the stage. I just saw a picture.
That's nice.
I saw a picture this morning that was taken backstage at the bottom line with myself and Debbie Harry and Peter Bogdanovich and Nancy Sinatra and Richard Barone. We're all in the frame together.
Yeah.
And that was a night when I was in New York City for something. I can't remember what, but I had a hotel room and I decided to go see Nancy Sinatra at the bottom line. And I just kind of showed up and they put me at a table and, she name checked me during the show. And then she gave Debbie Harry like a giant shout out, and cited her as an inspiration. And it was a great show. Nancy Sinatra was great that night. She had a new album right then. It was a self-titled album with like contemporary songwriters on it, contemporary producers, and she sounded great on this record. It's like a keeper album. She was
amazing, and I loved the Lee Hazelwood stuff as well.
There you go, absolutely. So that night after the show, I got escorted backstage, and somebody took our picture. But I didn't know that Peter Bogdanovich was there until the picture was taken. But that was a place that was like a home base for me, and always friendly to me, and then the Old City Winery, what is now the Old City Winery, was like that. I just had so many great nights in that place, and it was so homey, and I knew the people that worked there. The last time I was ever in there was the last time I ever saw Hal Willner. It was a Lou Reed tribute show at the Old City Winery, and it was just like one of those nights that I won't ever forget.
Right.
And I guess those are, like places in New York are the ones that I think of most fondly. I used to like the Ritz, which is Webster Hall, but for a while it was called the Ritz.
I remember the Ritz. That was great.
Yeah, and that's another one. I could just call up and say, I want to come to the show, and I'd be like at a VIP table, whether it was like the P-Funk All-Stars or the Blasters or whoever it was.
Right. And the Peppermint Lounge.
I loved that place.
I loved the Peppermint Lounge, too.
Oh, God, yeah, totally. Really loved it. the the 80s Peppermint Lounge, the one that I played at. I did love that place.
Yeah.
All of them I loved.
So let me just, we're like, time, of course, is racing right by. The song we just heard, the Sante Fe song, was so pretty. It's so different from the stuff that I grew up listening to of yours.
Oh, okay.
Which was a lot more up-tempo, and some people called it power pop.
Right,
some people called it new wave.
Yeah.
What is it? What do those things mean? And how do you like those labels? That still follow you around the internet.
Yeah, they do, but that's other people's jargon, terminology. I don't use that kind of, rock critic terminology myself.
Right. Did you ever use anything to describe your sound then
I used to
or
jokingly
now?
say to people that if they asked me what my stuff was like, I would say that it was like the Beatles, only better. And that was like, people would really scratch their heads and go, huh? And I didn't mean it either, but it was just a silly joke, but
yeah.
Anyway.
And
it's
now,
rock and roll music is what it is.
Yeah, it really
That's
is.
Really
it's
all it
such
is.
good rock and roll music.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, it's just so solid. And, and I tuned in to your music over the years, just as, pop music that I'd hear just out and about. But people I know, musicians I know, and songwriters I know, like, just revere you. They're like, oh my God, Marshall Crenshaw, he's such a great songwriter.
Wow.
You must be aware of this.
I get people say nice things, sometimes,
Yeah.
No, it's it's
and your guitar playing, revered.
Well, I ought to be at least sort of good by now. I started playing when I was 10 years old.
Do you practice?
I should be better than I am.
Do you practice much?
I do, but I mean not enough, and over the years I haven't. I feel like I've been really lazy over the years, but at least I've managed to do what I've managed to do. You know what I mean?
And I know your son Dean used to play guitar. Is he still playing?
Yeah, he's still playing. He's probably a lifer.
That's
like
great.
Me.
That's great kids. And Addie, what is she doing? She's older. Is she musical at all?
She just moved to Albany.
Oh, nice.
So she's right down the road from us.
That's great. So you get to see her often. Did she come home for the holidays and all that?
Yeah, she was here. But I mean,
and
I
Dean?
could drive up and see her right now if I wanted to.
Right. And
it's
Dean,
just so close. And I like Albany, too.
Yeah, I like Albany. And where's Dean living?
He's in Mesa, Arizona, going to a school.
Egads.
Yeah, he's at a school called the Conservatory for Recording Arts and Sciences.
Nice.
So he's going to pick up that whole skill set, I hope.
And Ione's not here. I'm just going to keep beating that horse. I really want her here. So I'm going to ask, was she any part of the inspiration for Cynical Girl?
No, well, I don't want to say no, because like there's, somehow or another, she's always present in my mind. But no, that's not even a song about anybody in particular. Cynical Girl. It's just it's rock and roll lyric language to have a girl in the song, and but the key lyric passage in that song is where it says, "I hate TV. There's got to be somebody other than me." I'm trying to say that the same thing that Soupy Sales said, which is that the quote unquote real world is an absurdity. That's what I'm trying to say in that song.
Yeah,
I'm just picking up on Soupy Sales and recycling it into.
Love the Soupy Sales connection. And now you're working on. I mean, these songs are newish. The last couple of years that you sent.
Yeah.
We only have the time to hear just that one, but you're also working on a documentary.
Oh yes, I am.
What's that all about?
Well, it's about popular music, of course, and it's specifically about a record producer named Tom Wilson, who was a real game-changing figure in popular music, whose name has been kind of lost to history, but it won't be after this. And I already, just from me doing this over the last couple of years, there's like a little bit of a buzz about him now, just because I've been going around talking about him, and so have other people. But anyway, Tom Wilson, let me see, he was African-American from East Texas, graduated Harvard University in 1954, started a record company right after that called Transition Records, which was like a real forward-thinking, mostly jazz record label, and he discovered Sun Ra. And when I say that he discovered Sun Ra, it's like Sun Ra was already like on his own path, right?
Yeah.
But Wilson was the first person from like the larger record industry that found Sun Ra. And I still don't know exactly how he heard about him, because Sun Ra was strictly like a Chicago situation at that time. But anyway, Wilson put out a Sun Ra album. He's the first record company to release anything by Sun Ra, and he also discovered Cecil Taylor. Both of those figures, they're not like known to every person, but their influence is part of the DNA of popular music, right?
Okay.
So Wilson starts out by discovering those two, and then a couple of years go by, and he winds up at Columbia Records. Wilson does, and he's assigned the task of producing Bob Dylan. Dylan's trying to finish his second album, and it's been taking him a year to finish it. So Wilson does the last session for the freewheeling Bob Dylan, and then after that he was Dylan's producer straight through to Like a Rolling Stone. That was the last record they made together. Wilson takes credit for convincing Bob Dylan to go electric, quote unquote.
Nice.
And there's evidence to back up his claim. It's not like an idle claim on his part. A lot of people like to take credit for things that they don't deserve credit for, but Wilson really has a legitimate claim on that whole thing.
So, are you enjoying the process?
You can tell. It really triggers me whenever anybody asks me or says his name.
Yeah.
But anyway, after Dylan, he also invented Simon and Garfunkel. You could say I won't go into the backstory of how he signed Paul Simon, but then, he made an album with Simon and Garfunkel, which was like a folk album, and then that failed, and they broke up. The duo broke up again, but then Wilson got the idea to overdub electric instruments, drums and electric guitars onto Sounds of Silence, and that's the version that we know. And it was unilaterally and singularly Tom Wilson who came up with the idea to do that. So he handed those guys their career on a silver platter. Then he went to Verve Records after that, had a falling out with Albert Gross.
The jazz label.
Yeah, but when they hired Wilson, he was coming off of Sounds of Silence and Like a Rolling Stone. So they brought him in as like a superstar rock producer. So you got any more time? Or?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll wrap this up as quick as I can. So Wilson's first two signings at Verve were the Velvet Underground and Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention.
Wow.
Neither one of those acts had a shot without Tom Wilson.
Yeah.
And so then there was that. And then he also produced like a dozen hits by Eric Burdon and the Animals. His last album project that he worked on was a Gil Scott-Heron album.
Nice.
It was just somebody with an amazing legacy, artistic legacy, but is mostly unknown to history.
And when do you think you might be done with us?
This year, I think we'll finish it.
That's exciting.
We're starting to finish it now.
So cool. And you've got an editor.
Yeah.
Super.
Oh, yeah. We talked about this. Yes, yeah. We do have one.
So you mentioned Zappa. Were you ever like a real Zappa fan?
Yeah. And
I found him difficult. I never really warmed to Zappa.
Well, I like the first 3-4 Mothers of Invention albums. The ones that Tom Wilson produced back in the day. I bought those and I liked them. And as a fan for a while, I kind of my take on it, I guess, is that I like about 30% of his music, and I actually marvel at it because he was, he was incredible, but my favorite thing of his now is the last project that he worked on, which is this orchestral music. And the album is called The Yellow Shark, and it's beautiful music. It's not rock music.
I'll check it out.
Anyway, I'm a fan of his.
Okay,
he was a real genius.
Nice.
Weird guy sometimes, though.
Yeah, seemed like
he had his head up his ass sometimes.
Right, but clearly smart, and I loved his work talking against censorship. Back in the day. So you also mentioned Dylan, and one reader wrote in wanting to know what you think about it. Like Dylan just sold his catalog to somebody, and other part-time Woodstocker, now deceased David Bowie, famously sold his catalog.
Yeah, I know.
What do you think about all that stuff? Do you ever think about selling your catalog?
Right now, no. The intellectual property of mine that I have, I want to keep it because I like having it. But no, that's another world away from. I don't even know what. I think Bruce Springsteen has gotten the most money now of any of those guys.
Bruce, I forgot about him.
So he wins, I guess.
Because he had no connection to Woodstock, so I forgot about him. And speaking of Woodstock, that's where we met. How did you get to Woodstock, and then why did you come to Rhinebeck?
Well, let me see. We lived in New York City before we lived before we lived in Woodstock. We lived in New York City, and there just came a point in time when I needed to go somewhere where it was quiet, and somebody knew somebody that was leaving a rented house in Woodstock. So Ione and I went up and looked at the house, and it was really nice. It was this great little house on 18 acres, and the rent was less than 50% of what I was paying for my duplex in the East Village.
Right.
And I had been getting my brains beat in a little bit right around that time, and so we just jumped on it. And
what year was that?
1987.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you left Woodstock, came to Rhinebeck.
Yeah.
Why?
School.
Yeah.
There are problems with the school choices over in Ulster County.
Right.
What's the name of the school district that we were in?
Onteora.
Yeah, it was that was not working out so great for us. So we wound up coming over here. There was a woman, I'm going to say her name, and her name is Alyssa Cogan. We ran into her at this place in Kingston where Dean was taking piano lessons, and she's very outgoing and friendly. And we talked to her about the problems we were having with the schools over in Woodstock, and she goes, "Why don't you move to Rhinebeck? They have great public schools." And we just said, "Yeah, we'll do it. We'll move to Rhinebeck. That's a great idea." Because we were really in a bad place, with the school thing.
Right, they were not working out.
I won't go into detail about it. It was a real mess, though.
Right.
You might remember some of what I'm talking about. But anyway, we came over here. And
we moved here.
I
for
like
the
it
schools.
Better, and it's fine. What?
We moved here for the schools as well.
See? Yeah.
And loved them. So
it turned out good.
Yeah,
good. We had a nice time over here with raising the kids.
And do you think you'll stay here, or you anticipate moving somewhere to retire?
I don't have any problem with it. I do like it here.
You don't have any problem. Yeah.
I don't want to say never to anything because that's not a good idea. But no, I'm fine. I like it here. This is a nice town.
It's a great town. All right, a couple more listener questions.
Okay.
And then I'll let you go because we're just about out of time. Listener Leonard Nevarez, I'm sure I mispronounced it, says his favorite Marshall Crenshaw album is the fourth, Mary Jean and Nine Others. And I listened to the title track, Mary Jean, which was awesome. How did you come to work with bassist Graham Maybe, who till this point was working exclusively with Joe Jackson?
Let me see. I met Graham when I played on some shows with Joe Jackson. During my first couple tours, I wound up on about 6 or 7 shows with them. That was when Steppin' Out was a hit by Joe Jackson. You remember that?
Yeah, good song.
Yeah, and we just got friendly, Graham and I. We hit it off. He's like a real people person, very super likable. Obviously, a really good bass player, and that's all. We just connected. We just liked each other for some reason, and at some point, Robert, my brother, and I. Anyway, Graham got in the band at some point. I just asked him if he was doing anything, and he wasn't. So I said, "Well, you want to go on this tour I'm going to do?" And that's all. But he's a longtime friend and a close friend, and he knows all my songs. Sometimes on stage, I joke that he's my musical director.
That's great. What a wonderful thing to have.
Guy.
Okay, one last listener question from Jennifer Tuax. Despite portraying Buddy Holly and being compared to him relentlessly, she says, you proved to be your own individual talented musician. How did the comparisons to Buddy Holly affect your start in the music industry?
I guess it was good, you know. It just gave people something to say about me. And it was legitimate, too, because I loved him from the time I was, 4 years old. I really loved him. I saw him on the Ed Sullivan Show. I still remember that. I saw him on American Bandstand. When he died, it really messed me up. I was just a child. Being compared to somebody else at first, it bothered me a little bit, but I don't even get that anymore. I was just kind of like a young, arrogant person,
right?
Very thorny, kind of, I got riled up easily back then over stupid little things. But anyway, now it's an honor that anybody ever would think of me in the same instance as him.
Yeah. So when did you stop getting riled up over stupid stuff?
Like a couple weeks ago, I think.
Well, hats off to you. Congratulations. And now I've got stupid stuff. Two more questions for me.
Oh, these are great questions.
You had a band, Marshall Crenshaw, and the Handsome, Ruthless, and Stupid Band.
Oh, yeah.
What the hell?
Well, that was just me, really, on that track. I did it by myself. But my mother when she was growing up, she really loved New Yorker magazine. And when I was a kid, she really tried to pull me in the direction of all that kind of stuff, like Robert Benchley and Dorothy Parker and James Thurber and stuff. I read all that stuff when I was 6 years old. And there's a line from Dorothy Parker where she says, "All that I require from a man is that he be handsome, ruthless, and stupid." And that's where that came from. I just remembered that.
That's
amazing. I
amazing.
to call myself the Handsome, Ruthless, and Stupid Band.
Nice. And you had an album, I think not under that band name, called "I've Suffered for My Art, Now It's Your Turn." I just want to say I love that. That's such a great album title.
That's a good album title. And it's just it might be like a Henny Youngman joke or something. I don't know. I picked it up somewhere. I didn't make it up by myself. I heard it somewhere.
Henny Youngman. It sounds about right. All right. Well, we're out of time. Marshall Crenshaw, thank you so much for being here. What a treat to get to ask you all these questions and just sort of hang out with you. Ione, you should have been here.
It could have been her first ever interview.
Yeah, she's the best.
Thank you.
So this is, correct me if I'm Norm, you're listening to Radio Free Rhinecliff, and thanks to Matt, our engineer and the founder of the station, and Patricia and Chris here at the Epicurean, the corner store in Rhinecliff. Have a fabulous Friday night. Good night.
I agree.